Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm reacting to I Am Not What I Am Aware Of. Ooh, yes, okay, at first I was like, that was kind of deep, but then now that I read it for the third or fifth time, I get it. That is very interesting. That is very interesting. Still, obviously this is pointing to the fact that the things that you're aware of, your thoughts, your mind, your your thoughts, again, your body, just everything essentially is not who you are, but the consciousness. That is again still a very interesting statement. And I am genuine. I need to look at what science has to say about consciousness. I know Swami has studied quite a bit of it and has said quite a lot in this channel, the hard question of consciousness. But anyways, let's go and give this video a shot.
The question here is that in Advaita Vedanta, we follow a process of self-enquiry. We inquire into our experience of ourselves. And the method for that enquiry is one principle that we take up. The principle that is taken up is, whatever I am aware of, I am not that. Whatever we are aware of is an object, not awareness itself. That which we are aware of is an object to awareness, not awareness itself. So by this process, we eliminate from our self-concept all objects. You see, the problem is that we have identified ourselves with things which are not ourself, with the body, with the mind. We take these to be I, me. But we are not these. Vedanta tells us that we are awareness, pure awareness. Now, how do we reach that? How do we appreciate what we truly are? By this method. This is the method that has been adopted, that the real nature of the self is that which is aware, and anything that we are aware of is not the real self, is an object to the real self.
Jnana Yoga. That's the practice for that. But I was thinking, as he was talking about that, once we are aware of what we are not, would we become aware of what we are? But then it'd be a contradictory statement. Because eventually, you will, I assume this though, but you can eventually know what you are not and know what you are, right? Question. Let me know. It just doesn't make sense though, but it does at the same time, because there's this, it's like an empty hole that it's looking out of. You're never looking in, but eventually that you know that everything that's outside is not you, but whatever's shining that light or pointing at those objects, you eventually realize that the thing that's pointing, the thing that's shining that awareness is who you are. It seems contradictory though, honestly. Let me know.
It's a very powerful method. Now, if you follow this method, even if you think about this method, then you will come to this question, which this gentleman has asked. The question is, so our ultimate goal is to know ourselves, self-realization, self-knowledge. Whatever we are aware of is an object, not the self. So when we reach self-knowledge, we'll be knowing the self, but then the self will be an object, because whatever we know is an object. Then it will not be the real self. And this question is to be appreciated. Then you can understand the beauty of the answer.
Sorry, I'm going to rewind that because I want to hear that part. Oh no, that's a number. Oops, I forgot to say it.
The self is that which is aware, and anything that we are aware of is not the real self, is an object to the real self. It's a very powerful method. Now, if you follow this method, even if you think about this method, then you will come to this question, which this gentleman has asked. The question is, so our ultimate goal is to know ourselves, self-realization, self-knowledge. Whatever we are aware of is an object, not the self. So when we reach self-knowledge, we'll be knowing the self, but then the self will be an object, because whatever we know is an object. Then it will not be the real self.
That's weird though, you know?
This question is to be appreciated. Then you can understand the beauty of the answer.
Okay.
So, the answer is that the self can never be known as an object. Whatever is an object is not the self, and that criterion remains true till the very end also.
Can you... Sorry for pausing, but can you... I was going to say attributes of the self. But then I know some people say there's no attributes to the self. But nothing is an attribute, but it's nothing. And again, thoughts are not objects. I mean, they're not well, they are actually physical objects. I don't know. Sorry.
Whatever you know as an object is not the self. So, will the self remain unknown? If the goal is self-knowledge, will we fail in attaining the goal? Will it remain with the self? Will my real self always remain unknown? No. It is more than known. It is not known in the usual sense of knowledge. What is the usual sense of knowledge? Whatever we know as an object, the usual sense of knowledge is by knowing something as an object. I, the consciousness, I deploy instruments of knowledge through the mind and the senses. So through the mind and the eyes, I, the consciousness, I see. What do I see? Objects, forms. I, this awareness, through the mind and the ears, I hear. What do I hear? Objects, sound. Similarly, other objects are there. For each sense organ, separate object. There is smell, and there is taste, and there is touch. Not only that, there are subtle objects.
Yeah.
In our mind itself. Thought and imagination and memory and ideas and desires, emotions. These are also objects. Why? Because we are aware of them. So at the level of the external world, the objects, physical body which is part of the external world, object. The breath, we are aware of it, object. Thoughts, emotions, memories, aware of it, object. Not the self. Beyond that, even the intellect which we are using right now for understanding all this, that is also an object. It's a process we are aware of. Beyond that, if you push, as he says, you will reach a blankness. The blankness we experience in deep sleep. The blankness we experience in deep meditation also. Because it is experienced, that's also an object. It is not us. So we are not the physical body, object. We are not the breath, the pranic body, object. We are not the mental body, mind. We are not the intellect. We are not even the blankness beyond the intellect. Not Annamaya Kosha, not Pranamaya Kosha, not Manomaya Kosha, not Vijnanamaya Kosha, not Anandamaya Kosha. Then, see, here is the beauty of it. We now are looking for our real self. And our tendency is to objectify. Why? Because we have always seen objects. Whatever we know are always objects. So somewhere, even if we say, I know that the self is not an object, we say that, we think that, but unconsciously the impulse is to objectify the self. It can never be objectified. It is not an object of awareness. It is the awareness itself. Then how is it known? Will it be unknown? No, it is more than known. In every act of knowledge it is known. Whenever you know something, the presence of objects, you are knowing the self itself. Whenever you know the absence of objects, you're still knowing the self itself. It's like, let me give you an example. It's only an example. So when I show you the clock, what do you see? It's a clock. And then I show you the mic here. What do you see? Mic. I show you the cloth here. What do you see? Cloth. Clock, mic, cloth. 3 different objects. But notice there's something else you are missing. It is not just clock. It is the light reflected of the clock. There is clock here plus light. The light is falling on it and then it's illumining the clock. So you're seeing the light. The same light falls on this mic and illumines it. It is mic plus light that gives you the experience of the microphone. It is cloth plus light which gives you the experience of the cloth. What is common to all of them? Clock is different from mic is different from cloth, but the same light is illumining all of them. In the same way, there is consciousness in every experience, in every knowledge of every object. One thing is there, consciousness is always there. Now, why did I say it's only an example? One thing one must be careful of here. The clock is a material object, but the light which is reflected from this clock is also a material object. So that does not apply to consciousness. What I mean is, in every knowledge, consciousness is there, but not as an object, as the illuminer of that object. Once we realize that, then we will find it in every knowledge. In Kenopanishad it is said, Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam hi vindate. In every episode of knowledge, in seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, in thinking, remembering, understanding, forgetting, loving, hating, whatever it is, the same consciousness is shining everywhere, but not as an object. So it is self-revealed. There is a very important conception in Advaita Vedanta, self-revealed. Self-revealed is in Sanskrit swaprakasha. Swaprakasha. It does not know itself. It is, in English, self-revealed or self-luminous, swaprakasha. It is revealed by itself continuously, but it's not an object to itself.
Excuse me. So basically, I was trying to think of an example. I guess the issue is the fact that your true self isn't everything. Because in order for you to be aware of something, the awareness, you must be present. So you're always there. You can't say it's knowledge either. All you is awareness. Because obviously knowledge is memory. But in order for I'm trying to think of where to put it other than you are just genuine awareness and nothing else. And in everything that is experience, you are there. And this kind of goes back to something I've said before about consciousness. It's the fact that everything must manifest in consciousness. And you are the consciousness. You are the awareness. And that's the reason why, at least in my belief, that Advaita Vedanta, I do believe, says that everything is pure consciousness. Now, whether that means things external, including yourself, your body, should I say, your mind, your thoughts, are all all consciousness in terms of, oh man, how to describe this one? As separate from your consciousness. That's a difficult one to explain. Or like how I think of it, as in you have your consciousness, and this body is not consciousness. But in order for you to be aware of this body, it must manifest in your consciousness. So your experience is pure consciousness. But this is not consciousness. But for you to experience this, it must manifest in your consciousness, so therefore it is consciousness. Does that make sense? Anyways, let's continue on, because
in philosophy, self-reflexivity is a fault. Self-reflexivity means nothing can make itself an object. So, for example, I can use this finger to touch things. I can touch the microphone, I can touch the cloth, I can touch the table. This fingertip I can touch. But can this fingertip touch itself? No. It can touch other fingertips, but it cannot touch itself. Right? In the same way, these eyes, they can see other things. But they cannot see themselves. And don't say that you can see yourself in a mirror. You are seeing a reflection of the eyes in the mirror. The eyes cannot see themselves directly the way they're seeing other things.
But I'm wondering if the mirror is a good explanation of how Advaita Vedanta, or at least maybe not Advaita Vedanta specifically, but in terms of looking inwards, you look inwards to see a reflection of yourself, not your true self, but to realize that how to say to see what you are not. Obviously, we can see things externally very well, but we don't ever look inside to see that things that we are not. And perhaps a mirror is a good example of that, where obviously objects in the real world is very much easy to see that it's not us. But whenever people think of themselves as thoughts and emotions and all that, they never look inwards to say, "Oh, I am not the emotion and thoughts in a mirror." I guess would be a very good example of that, perhaps.
So self-reflexivity is not allowed, or it's seen as a fault in philosophy. Self-reflexivity means something knowing itself, something referring to itself. Eyes do not see themselves. The finger does not touch itself. Similarly, consciousness does not know itself. So when enlightenment comes, you cannot say that the self will know itself. No. It does not technically know itself. But it is more than known. It is self-revealed. It's self-luminous. Not only in enlightenment, in every knowledge, in all ordinary knowledge, in religious knowledge, spiritual knowledge, in all kinds of knowledge, consciousness is self-revealed. Just as the light is common when it's reflected off all the objects. Also, the eyes, when we see different things, we are seeing different things, but what is common to all of them? That the eyes are seeing, same eyes are seeing everything. And I touch different things with the fingertips. What is common to that? The same fingertip is touching everything. So, in touching everything, I can say that I know that the fingertip. In seeing everything, the eyes are self-revealed. In self-knowledge, what happens is you realize the luminous nature of consciousness, and then in every act of knowledge, it doesn't have to be only Brahma Jnana. In every act of knowledge, the self is revealed, consciousness is revealed. That in dualistic language, it is called seeing God everywhere, seeing God in everyone, seeing God in every experience. So the answer to the question is, when self-realization comes, will the self know itself? If it knows itself, then it becomes an object. It cannot be the self anymore. No, it will not know itself as an object. But the self-luminous nature of consciousness will be revealed to us and will be continuously available. It is already continuously available to us. We don't recognize it, that's all. We will recognize it thereafter, every act of knowledge, in every episode of knowledge, it will be recognized. And that is called freedom in Kena Upanishad. Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam hivindate. In every cognition, when consciousness reveals itself, when you realize it, the presence of consciousness, yourself, the self, real self, that is called immortality. Then you may live anywhere, you may live in any way. Yatra tatra, in the language of Ashtavakra. Yatha tatha. As whatever your condition, you may be a monk, you may be a householder, you may be fully active in the world, you may be totally withdrawn from the world, you may be healthy, the body may be healthy or sick, you may be young or old, a body. In whatever condition, you may be well known in the world, you may be absolutely unknown, whatever is the condition of your life, wherever you exist, you are that one ever free consciousness, you are totally free. And that is Jivan Mukti, freedom while living. Yes.
Okay, so I think I utterly failed for the most part in this video. I get what he's saying, but it's so difficult for me to try to explain it or put it in an example. Mind you, whenever I try to put in an example, I try to put in somewhat of, I guess you could say, a Western mind, perhaps, or something most common people would understand. And this is something that's just this is something that's very difficult to explain. Even though, like, I think most people who watch, who study this would probably understand and perhaps have a way of explaining it, but I think that explanation will probably go over a lot of people's head. I understand what he's saying, that like, you know, you cannot, the flashlight cannot light itself, the water cannot wet itself, the fingertip cannot touch itself, the single one eye cannot see itself. You know, some people be smart asses and they poke their eye out and they look at each other. But the individual eye cannot see itself. It can see other eyes. It can see your right eye or left eye, you know. But then trying to put that as an example, Swami Sarvapriyananda here did a great job at explaining with the fingertip not able to touch itself, but it's able to touch other things. Along with the eye or eyes, they cannot see themselves, but they can see other things that are not themselves. And I'm trying to find a little bit of a simpler way of putting that, but I don't think I can, honestly. But yeah, so anyways, about my consciousness, the consciousness thing that I had was just, I'm just very fascinated whether people agree with that. Well, actually, agree with that or not, but at the same time, I've not got really a clear definition in terms of pure consciousness, but that's a different topic anyways. But yeah, I am not what I am aware of. That is going to go over so many people's heads. It went over my head the first 2 or 3 times. I misread it somehow. But it's a very interesting statement to ask someone. Are you, how would you phrase it? Are you what you are aware of? I wonder if someone would, I wonder what people, people who don't really study this, what they would say. Again, I can think back to a time whenever I would think that I am the brain. And then whenever, they say that you're not the mind or not the brain, I can bring that to logic to a degree, because there are some people that are missing parts of their brains and are still fully functional and still very much aware. So I can bring that to an example that most people hopefully would understand. I'm not saying everyone, but obviously, you're not every part of the brain. You can be missing a lot of parts of the brain, and I know some people say you're not the brain itself too, but it's something that it brings it down to a little bit of, I don't know, earth, I guess, or just something that's, I guess you could say, is very much a tangible understanding. To go into like everything's pure consciousness, that gets a little bit difficult to explain. But at the same time, I have my version or definition of it, which is the fact that in each of our own mind is our consciousness. I know some people don't agree with me with that, but so far that's the best explanation that fits into the reality that I understand thus far. And it still has kind of the same understanding as Advaita Vedanta in terms that everything is consciousness, which in my explanation is true. It's true because in order for me to experience something, it must manifest in my consciousness. So it must manifest in my consciousness, as though my consciousness was an object, but it's not. But my consciousness must be aware of it, and for it to be aware of it, it must manifest in my consciousness for me to be aware of it. And my consciousness is not something separate from myself. It is myself, but manifesting things I am aware of. Now that I think about that, it starts to fall apart a little bit, I think. I have to think about that a little more. I am going way off a tangent here. But again, as I watch more and more of these things, I think more and more of certain things that I've thought of before, certain things that I've understand before, what I've learned, and as I said a few times, not too many times, that I always try to destroy my arguments. The reason for that is because every argument that I try to destroy my argument with, if it fails, it strengthens the argument that I already have. And I think that's a great way to for people to develop their arguments. Try to destroy your own arguments. Try to put it down. And if you fail to put it down, that strengthens your argument. So if someone were to come up there and talk to you and try to talk down to your argument, but you've already used that argument against your own, you can explain to them this is why it's held up strong. I'll have to think about my own manifest in your consciousness idea. Again, I'm not too familiar with consciousness. Although, again, you know, it is something that we all have. Hard question of consciousness, according to Swami Nanda, that Westerners, scientists are thinking about, psychologists, I believe. But yes, anyways, way off tangent. Anyways, that's my reaction to I Am Not What I Am Aware Of. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.